Welcome to Love Light, the only podcast dedicated to bright, fine art photography. Hosted by Sarah Jane Ethan, Love Light is here to celebrate all things bright, pretty and pastel. At Love Light, white is the new black and beauty is in the detail. This is your place to relax, a place to belong, a place to be inspired and connect with like-minded colleagues who share your passion for light and beauty. So come and introduce yourself in the Love Light Facebook group and subscribe to the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram for your weekly dose of inspiration and connect with bright, fine art photographers from around the world.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Love Light podcast. Today I'm very excited to have Kayla Barker with us. Kayla Barker is an award-winning international film photographer and she lives in Texas with her husband Clint and her little baby Celeste, or not so much a baby now, but still a baby in your heart,
yeah.
as any mother can attest. We're extremely excited to have Kayla with us today because Kayla is very well renowned for her work. She's in the Knot Hall of Fame. She was the winner of the PDN Top Knots and nominated by Belle Lumiere as an emerging film photographer. Her work's been featured in Martha Stewart, Brides, The Knot, Style Me Pretty, Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Wedding Sparrow, Magnolia Rouge, so the list goes on. So we're incredibly excited to have Kayla with us today. Kayla, thank you so much for taking time to come and talk to us about your work and your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
You're so welcome. So if you're a member of the Love Light Facebook group, you will have already seen some of Kayla's work posted and it's absolutely stunning. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into photography. How did you start?
Well, I've always been doing photography since I was young. Like I remember getting a camera for Christmas one year. And so it's always, I think, been part of my life. And I've loved documenting our own family stories. So I was really big into memory preserving and scrapbooking growing up. And I loved doing that. So in high school, I remember when I was 15, I bought like my first SLR camera. It was film. So 35 millimeter SLR camera and 50 millimeter lens I saved up so I could buy those. And I loved just taking photos of my friends and events and capturing things, and I love dropping the film off like at the grocery store, and I would get prints made from the grocery store. Back
in the day when you drop it off at the grocery store.
Yes, they were probably pretty bad, but it was, shooting film and I like to get like triple prints made so I could pass it out to my friends and keep it. And so I was really big just into preserving memories. And so I've always been doing photography as long as I can remember. And then I ended up going to college for graphic design. So I went into graphic design and not photography, which I'm really glad I did because I feel like my graphic design background really like plays a big part in my photography with composition and with being able to do branding and my own website stuff. So that was just, I did branding
very
design.
Handy.
Yes. And I haven't had to pay anyone to do my website or branding, which has been awesome. So I did that for quite a few years. But in the meantime, I was still doing photography kind of throughout. And I had some friends. Basically, I shot some photos at one of my friends' weddings. So I was a bridesmaid in, and I just kind of brought my camera and did what I always do, is capture kind of what's going on during the day at the wedding. And she ended up really loving the photos and didn't love her professional photos so much.
Wow.
And because I think her photographer is like more of an architectural photographer, and just there's something different about having someone that just is there and knows you. And so when her sister got engaged, her sister the next year was like, "Hey, can you take some photos at my wedding?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And then I realized she was like asking me to be her actual wedding photographer, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I can do that." I was like, I haven't done that before. And I was pretty young, and they paid me like a couple $100 just so I could buy some extra memory cards because I didn't even have enough memory cards to photograph a whole wedding on. And I had my dad come second shoot with me, and we were
amazing.
Yeah, you see a pop-up flash and just all kinds of, super crazy amateur stuff. But that was like 13 years ago. So it was a long time ago. And the next year I actually got married. And so I really got into looking at wedding vlogs, and Style Me Pretty was really new. And I just loved looking at wedding photography. And I had a really hard time finding a photographer where I live out in West Texas that brought a really unique style and photo. Back then it was a little more photojournalistic, and really just anyone that captured not super classic. Like the style was still like very pose and classic. I wanted someone that captured a little more emotion and the details. And so that was just, I realized something that was missing where I live. So once I got married, I decided I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe try doing wedding photography and add it in with my graphic design business. And it really took off within like 1 year. I went from like doing one wedding that year to the next year, I think doing like 10, and the next year was like 15 and 20. And so it really took off pretty fast, and people really connected with it. And it was definitely something that was missing. And, even digital back then was newer. So I bought like one of the first, digital SLRs when I was a senior in high school. So that was like another thing I saved up to and bought that camera and did the digital thing for quite a few years. So I kind of like built up, and I really, from the beginning, I kind of branded myself as a destination wedding photographer. Just because where I live in West Texas, I wanted to be able to get out and see stuff and, do different types of weddings. And some of my very first brides ended up, they decided instead of getting married in Texas, they decided to move their wedding to like the Dominican Republic. And it just gave me the opportunity to start doing destination weddings and have that in my portfolio.
Yes.
And so early on, I just, offered destination weddings at a pretty big discount, or like if they paid for all my travel and expenses, I would come shoot for free for 1 or 2 weddings a year, along with all my other local U.S. weddings. And so I did that, and I was able to really build up this destination portfolio and brand myself that way before I started shooting film, and it got a lot more expensive. And
that's the thing,
now I can't do that, and I have to really like make sure all my expenses are getting covered. And film processing is so crazy expensive that people don't realize how much I'm gonna expend on expenses at a wedding. But so
I don't know whether you caught the Greg Fink interview a little while ago. But he was saying you spend 70,000 euros on film processing every year.
Yes, that's totally normal, and it's crazy the amount of for every wedding. I know my expenses could be like $2,000 just in like film and processing and products that are going to go back to the client. That doesn't even include the travel. So it's pretty crazy now, but. Yeah, it's just I kind of like did so many years as a digital photographer, and I was really loving it. But I got to the point where I was almost getting a little bit burnout because I was shooting so many weddings and had so many sessions with each of those weddings, and was traveling a lot, and mostly was just spending a ton of time behind the computer. And what I loved about photography is the client interaction. And I loved being able to be with people and, capture it and really just do what I love doing, the hands-on part of it, and not being on the computer editing. And I just remember before, I'd be getting ready to leave for one wedding, and I was up till 5 a.m. trying to edit another wedding and get it online before I like flew out for a different wedding. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I'm loving this anymore. This was like, used to be a hobby and something that was fun. And it was getting to where I was a little bit burnt out and didn't really even want to continue. And I tell people in my workshops, I like to tell a story because I feel like people always think like it's so glamorous or that everything's figured out. And I tell them like I was so burnt out. I was going to take my whole website down, like completely quit. And this was in 2013. And I just was getting really frustrated. And I finally decided that year to buy a film camera. I was just kind of exploring different things. Like I got into doing encaustic, which I can talk about later, and doing encaustic art. I like took a random women's portrait workshop, and then I bought my film camera, like just like trying to kind of, figure some new direction and new inspiration. I feel like you kind of go through these phases like every 5 years where you kind of almost need to reinvent yourself or, kind of like,
how long have you
for me, like,
Kayla?
How long have I what?
How long have you been shooting for? Like doing
my first wedding, the first one was in 2007. So 2007. Right. So it's been about 13 years.
That's interesting. You say you kind of see it cycling about 5 years or so.
Yeah.
You're wanting to branch out and try something new. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's almost like, or for me, I just kind of feel like you kind of get to, not like, I don't know if I call it burnout because it's not like I like completely ever want to quit photography, but just almost like a new challenge. And so in 2013, I brought film photography in as that challenge. I'd been thinking about it for a while and was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this film camera, like this Contax camera off eBay that I didn't even know how to load. I never shot medium format film, just 35 millimeter. And I was like, okay, I was sitting at right before a shoot and I was on eBay and I was like, okay, purchase. And I was like, oh, dang it. I just bought a $4,000 camera that I don't know how to use. And then I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. And so it came in and it literally sat for like a month. I didn't even want to touch it. I was like scared to, figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I finally decided to take it to a really pretty wedding that I was doing, which was probably not what you should do, but that's what I did. I took
Well,
it to a wedding and I was like, I'm gonna like YouTube right before, a couple days before, like how to load film, and I didn't know how to use the light meter, and I was like going around like kind of putting in the shadows. I didn't really know what to do,
yeah.
and just kind of had like read different people's exposures, and I was like, well, they're shooting this at like 2.0 to 60th. I don't know if I was on digital, it'd be super blown out, and I'm like shooting similar settings, and I was like, I think all these photos are gonna come back just like completely white. Like they're gonna be blown out white. Like I didn't really know. But I just shot a handful of images. And when they came back from the lab, I was like, oh wow, this is like what I've been missing. This is like what I want my photos to look like. Because you kind of get to a point with digital, you can kind of like, this was really before a lot of good film presets or profiles, and I could only go so far with the editing of digital. And when the film photos came back, I was like, this is what I love. It's like that beautiful cinematic airy quality that I kind of wanted my work to be. And so it was really kind of took off. And that year I decided to go ahead and start shooting more and more throughout the year at my weddings to where I could finally build a whole new portfolio. And in 2014 I relaunched like as my name, Kayla Barker, with all film website, and was like, I'm just going all film and I'm just gonna switch over, and I just kind of went for it. So that's been almost 6 years I've been shooting film. So
do you shoot exclusively film? Do you? No digital, just film?
I do some digital for receptions, but for all my portrait work, engagements, even most of my family work is all on film. So and then weddings, it'll vary based on kind of like the lighting situation. Because I still like to shoot digital for like dancing sometimes, and I'll still shoot film throughout the whole reception too, black and white, or with a flash or with a video light. So I'm shooting some film, but then also digital to kind of capture some of those moments on color a little bit better for them.
Well, now this is interesting because you said it's 6 years since you did that. And so that has passed the 5-year mark where you normally get bored and wanting to.
Yes.
Have you not experienced that this time?
I feel like the last, so I had my baby almost 2 years ago. So that's been a whole new transition of becoming a mom. And
there's only so many new things you can do at once.
And so that's been crazy. And so it's already been kind of like, I feel like I'm reinventing myself a little bit, which is how I work and like what's important to me, and doing different personal projects, I think, to keep me kind of inspired and doing things like that, along with still shooting my weddings and my portraits and stuff.
That's interesting. So when you say that you're kind of reinventing the way that you work, I suppose around being a mother, like what does that look like? What changes are you making?
Mostly I don't have as much time, and I think you just get a lot more efficient with your time. And so it's like, okay, I've got, maybe more time blocking than I used to, where I could just like float into the office and spend 6 hours editing or working and did whatever I felt like for that day. And now it's like, okay, I've got a 2-hour nap time where I can like get in, and I've got to do, wake up, do emails before she wakes up. Then I'm at nap time, I'm going to edit. And I kind of know like what things I like to do in the afternoon, and I feel better doing certain things in the evening. Like I actually like to edit in the evening, and I don't mind editing late at night, like after she goes to bed. So that's probably the biggest change, is really it blocks my time, because I spend, I'm at home with her all day. So it's really just scheduling my time out and get a lot more efficient.
Yes. So you said that you, because you mentioned that getting more efficient at your work, are there things that you have noticed that because you are restricted on time now, that you're just naturally starting to either cut out or doing less of, that you perhaps would have focused on beforehand? Because for people listening who may not even have children, it's still a good thing to try and streamline your work. And maybe there are things that you've noticed now that you have to be selective. You're actually thinking, that's not as important as I thought it was, before I had a child. And I haven't actually seen an effect in my business if I cut that down. Is there anything like that?
I think it's just realizing what's really important. Like I haven't been able to do as much marketing as I used to, or even Instagramming and that kind of thing. And you can see how not doing that can actually, like don't get as many bookings. So I have to like focus a little bit more on spending more time doing that. And you realize like, okay, and especially with weddings, if you like the year that she was really tiny, it affects the following year. So when I'm super busy, so if you can like bring in a team to do some of that, I think some of that would be really awesome. I still do a lot of it myself. But I think just overall, just not worrying so much about, I got to get all these submissions done. Like I kind of will like focus on like, okay, well, when I have a month that's a little more free, then I'll work on submissions. Like I just got my new website up. That's been something I've been literally working on for 2 years, and just giving myself more grace with how much time stuff takes.
Yes.
My clients always come first, and editing always comes first, and getting their photos up in time.
Yes.
And so between emails and editing, but then other personal things, I've had to spend a little more time on my website. It's getting 2 years to get it up is crazy long, but it was on my goal list to do last March. I finally got it up this February, and that's okay. Like I'm not gonna get so mad at myself because it's not getting done. And finally I'm like, okay, so blocking off like sections where I'm like, okay, I don't have any shoots this week, so this is a good time to launch my print shop. And then this is a month that I don't really have any any weddings going on in January, so I can work on launching my website. So kind of stuff like that, I guess, where you just, I think, manage stuff a little bit better instead of like, all of a sudden, I'm going to do this really fast and work on this, or I've got so much time to do it all. So kind of blocking time and months better a little bit.
I think that is such a good tip, because like you said, there are some months that are quieter and you can just put tasks into there, and that's something that I did very early on in my business, and I've never regretted it. So all of my album designs go in the winter, all of my even my engagement shoots. I know that it's not ideal. I don't have ideal weather conditions during the winter, but for my sanity, I don't want to be doing engagement shoots during the summer when I'm doing all my weddings. I just want to be able to focus all of my blog submissions, updating testimonies on my website, all of this stuff all goes in the winter. And in the summer, I actually have a very leisurely pace of life. I just do weddings and edit, and I spend a lot of time sunbathing in the garden, which wishing in England is not, you have to take the bit of sun that you can get. I literally look at the weather report for the week and I think, right, I'll edit on Monday and Tuesday, and then I'll sunbathe on Wednesday because we've actually got some sun on Wednesday.
I know. Yeah. And you need that to kind of like balance out. Like I just know, like if I don't spend some time like maybe working in my art studio on my art, I just don't feel good to like give time to my clients or to my family if I don't have a little of my own personal creative time. So, like this weekend on Saturday and Sunday, I didn't have anything going on. So I was like, I'm going to get into my art studio and work on my encaustic art stuff for, 2-3 hours, not even that long, but just doing some personal stuff for me, like makes me a lot more productive. And I just feel so much better to where I can work on other client stuff than the rest of the week. And, just feel better when you kind of like give yourself some time.
Finding those things that recharge you. That's fascinating. It sounds like personal projects and creative projects are incredibly important to you. And that's what recharges you. And you've mentioned this caustic art.
Yes. So
I've seen pictures and it's amazing. Tell us about how that works.
Yeah.
How you came upon it, or
And I read about encaustic art in Rangefinder like a long time ago. And in 2013, when I was like just really feeling like I needed to do something hands-on or different, I took an encaustic workshop, and it's basically a really ancient form of painting that uses hot beeswax and resin to preserve imagery. And they would paint mummy portraits. That's kind of like one of the original forms of image preservation is using encaustic, so beeswax, pigment, resin, and painting. So I use that same mixture over top of my photographs. And so they're printed out, usually mounted on a board or printed out on fine art paper, and I wax them while the wax is hot, and then it cools really fast, and I can scrape, add texture, add dimension. So it takes my photographs to a more dimensional level, and I can give them a different story, a different color. I can fog out parts of the image, bring focus to certain parts, because the more it builds up, the foggier it gets. And it's just really fun and hands-on, and it's something really different. A lot of people don't do it, and
I've never heard of anyone doing it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really fun. It looks so much better in person, I feel like. And so I've been trying to share more videos of it, because you just can't, it's harder to see a photo and know what it is. But when you can see it in person or see a video,
especially if it's
really
got that dimensional aspect to it. You said that, you're looking at the textures, and so you need to really see it in person.
Yeah, and everyone wants to fill them. So when I'm at a show or something, they're like, oh, I know they want to fill it. I'm like, it's okay. You can totally touch it. It's not going to break. It's almost like sculpting a little bit, but with wax. So it's really neat. I've been working on an online course for it, because there just wasn't anything out there when I wanted to do it. And so I've been working on an online course that's hopefully going to come out soon with how to do it. And if anyone's interested in that, it's just really neat. And it's something for me personally, I've been doing for quite a few years, and it's on the side, and it's not like a huge part of my income, but it's just something that's really fun and that I've, grown, and I've really just enjoyed doing something else with my photos. It's not just, even fine art prints, but taking that to another level. It's a little more.
I have no doubt that course will be very popular, because that's such an interesting, fascinating new way just to enjoy your photos, I suppose.
Yes.
Often once we finished the photo, it's like, oh, that's the end now. And actually you can enjoy your photo for longer and continue with it. And that's really great.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question about that, actually. Oh, yes. Do you sell them to your clients, or do you sell them separately, or is it part of a package you give to your clients?
A lot of it is mostly my art collectors are actually kind of separate from my photography clients, which is kind of interesting. People that appreciate, that do more fine art. Some of them cross over, so I have some that are the same. I've had a couple I've did a really huge one of my family clients of their girls that were like walking away, and it was a big 24 by 36 piece that was really sweet. So I've done some for my photography clients if they're like, they love both things. So it kind of just depends. And I've made it as an option for some people, but I think in general, people just need to, love prints more and like the tangible product more. And that's something that's like really missing in our age, I think, with right now, that it's hard to get people to like buy prints, buy an album. Like I want to give them prints as part of their wedding package. And that gets, all my clients get a big box of, 400 prints, because I'm like, look, you got to have something tangible. That's not just a flash drive. And for all of my wedding clients, they get an 8x10 encaustic piece. So I do that as like a gift to them for all my wedding clients. So that's been fun to see over the years. Like all my clients have had their like keepsake with their box, and they also have this encaustic piece. So I offer it to my other clients, but it also is for me, I keep it a little bit more personal. I can work on just like personal stuff with it too.
And so here's an interesting question. How do you keep the joy? Because you said that doing this artwork is like a real, I don't know, it's a reinvigorating for you. On the weekend when you haven't got anything else, you'll do this. But if you're doing one for every client, how do you keep away from the stress of, oh, I've got to do it, I've got to have it ready for this client, and keep it as something that you actually really love doing for fun, for relaxation as well?
I don't know. I still like doing it, even though, there's small pieces that I'm doing for my clients, so they're not really big. And I usually will do them in a batch. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do like these 4 brides, and I print out whatever piece I want. They don't even know they're getting it. So I pick at the picture, and I mount it, and I just wax them all together. We filmed like one set of me doing a couple bridal ones that will be in my course, because it was just kind of to show like how I like to give it, and then I wrap it up and it just goes in with their wedding box. So it's fun. So it's not overwhelming. It's like an overwhelming number because I'm not only doing it for my wedding clients, not all my portrait clients too. So it's just, those clients throughout the year. So I kind of will do like a couple at a time and then send it off with their boxes and stuff. It's fun. I like it.
I bet that's such a surprise for them to see it. That's a really nice touch.
And some of them know, like some of them really appreciate it, or they don't know they're getting it, and so it's just something extra that's unique that I don't think anyone else really offers or does. It's fun.
I love that. And you obviously just love being creative, and that just it spills out of your business into other areas, and you're always looking for new ways to be creative. You mentioned doing the photo a day projects, and tell us a bit more about that, how you keep your creative juices going.
I know, I feel bad because I'm like, sometimes I'm the artist that just is always like hopping from this thing to this thing, and I like so many different hobbies, or collecting art supplies, and I love all different cameras and different films. So it's just, I'm always kind of trying new things, and it keeps me really happy, and I don't know, just fun to try new things. But I started this past in 2019, I started a photo a day project on film. And mostly because I realized I was shooting such great film images for all my clients, for their families, and I wasn't really shooting any for us. Like I was not really, I was really good about shooting digital things or iPhone, some video. I was like, I'm not really taking like these really awesome film photos of our daily life, or setting up even photo shoots with my daughter. I really wasn't doing that like I do for my clients. And so I decided to do a photo a day project in 2019, where I shot at least one photo every day on 35 millimeter Kodak Tri-X 400 film. So I use the same camera. I use my Canon 1V 35 millimeter lens. So it's a little more wide angle than I normally shoot for my client stuff. So wide angle, all black and white. And it was really neat to see the outcome, because it really challenged me to also really just work on composition and how to make your everyday life interesting. I had gone to see Annie Leibovitz speak a couple years ago when her new book came out, and I wasn't like super into like her photos from her book, but what I really loved from her whole presentation was these black and white images of her family that she had taken, which they were on film because they were from the 80s and 90s. And I was so inspired by the emotion in those. And I was like, that was, out of all the photos she showed of, all the celebrities, those are the ones that I really connected with. And so it's like, that's what I want to create for us and have these memories on film of, for us. So I spent the whole year, and I ended up not with a photo a day. I ended up with like 1,000 photos. So it was way more than a photo a day. I ended up with a lot because I'd kind of like take a couple each day. And then some days I like maybe missed. And a lot of it was, a lot of it's just like us hanging out at home or traveling, but it really helped me like work on my composition even more, of like making everyday life look more interesting. Because it's like, I can make a beautiful model and a beautiful backdrop with beautiful flowers look good. A lot of people can make that look good. And, beautiful weddings, beautiful brides, that's easy to do. But can we make like the everyday craziness and the mess like more interesting, or more composition, or add more emotion? So it almost kind of was like the photojournalistic side of me that I don't really, I guess, practice a lot, where in fine art, everything's a little more posed or more curated. And so it's been really fun. And I just decided to keep going with it. And so my husband shoots some of the photos too. So we'd have a lot of really sweet photos of us from the year. And I started an Instagram. It's Kayla Barker Film, just to kind of put them out there. I kind of waited for the whole year to put them all together and edit them and organize them and go through them. And I put together a little slideshow for us. And I think I want to print them out into an album if I can get all 1,000 photos into some type of book, because there's a lot of them, but put them all into a book just to have like a finalized printed copy of like the whole year on film. So it's been really fun.
What I love about this is that you're really understanding that photography isn't just for money, but it's also it's for yourself, and it's for your family, as well, and for your life. And that's really wonderful. So you did this photo a day project to challenge yourself with the more candid, having to think on the spot and be creative about your angles. Probably your graphic design experience came in handy there. How did you feel like that impacted on your weddings? Did you feel like you started taking pictures you wouldn't have normally taken at a wedding because you were thinking differently?
I think it just helped me see, and one, like shooting more wide. So I like that, shooting more wide angle a little bit, that a lot of us film photographers don't really do. And then also just seeing a little more emotion, I think, going on. Like I realized the photos that are really going to be the ones that are so important, even to brides, to my couples, or for my portrait clients, are those really emotional ones. Those are the ones you look back and you're like, those are the ones that really move them. And sometimes we get too distracted just capturing all the things, or like all the details, which I love all the details of the weddings. Like I love styling. I love taking the pictures of all the details, but really just remembering to focus on the emotion of what's going on, and seeing, kind of just watching that a little bit more, I think, than just kind of like going through all the list of like all curating everything so beautifully. And that sometimes it doesn't need to be so perfect. And because to them, it's more about the emotion or getting captured. And I've had some clients, where their families passed away, or their dad got cancer. And so some of these photos that are more candid with those people are just become so much more important overall. And that's kind of been my thing too, is like, as I go through, I think about just overall just capturing my family. That's like why I started doing photography, was capturing my family and memories, and like come back to that a little bit for myself, and bring that into my client work and stuff like that. But just also, another thing I want to do this year is really do really good portraits of everyone in my family, even if they're just like, not even something big or crazy, but just take really amazing portraits of everyone in my family. Because it's like, I'm shooting all these clients all year, but I haven't taken a picture of like my mother-in-law or my father-in-law on film ever, you know, or like some of my family members, you know, and as you get older and like my grandpa passed away a couple weeks ago, we're like, we don't have a photo, you know, it's like, why don't we have photos? I mean, we do, but like no good, you know, just nice portraits of people. And sometimes that's like what really you really need or look for later in life is like these really, you just see how important photos are when these parts of life happen, and just those memories and like the photos, and you're like, where are those photos? We had them, and how important printed photos are, and just capturing all those memories. So I don't know, lots of like,
it's so true. Yeah. And I actually, somebody shared on Facebook this morning, so it was a radio interview, I think, and she was reading this letter or statement that somebody had been making about how with motherhood you're parenting the same person, but it's kind of different people, because it's a baby and then a toddler and then and the way you're parenting is different because they're changing, and she said every now and then Facebook shows you a picture and reminds you of a child that you did parent, you know, and you did know they've moved on. And she said, and I feel really emotional because I'm like, I'm never going to see that kind of child again, you know, in that moment, the way we were. And I suppose what you're saying is just that you're capturing that moment, because you never know when the seasons are changing, when children are moving on, and we never know when people are going to go. We just you know, it doesn't matter about age, anything can happen, and you never know what might have been the last photo of that person. And my grandma, we went to go and visit her. She her kind of mental strength gave out. So for the last 10 years of her life, she didn't really do anything. She was an incredibly active woman, and she just sank into this. She just sat in her armchair all day, just head in her hands. And we went down to visit, and we had the camera with us. And she just suddenly came alive, and she came over to where I was sitting. She got out the photo album. She starts telling me all these stories about, like, we hadn't had that much interaction with her in years. So I was going to my husband, Matt, get the camera like this. And we just laughed, and we told stories, and we got these pictures of her laughing. And then I cottoned on that she thought I was suggesting that she go out for a photo shoot. And so I said, yes, let's do it. Let's get your shoes on. Let's go outside. She hadn't been outside the house in 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
She got her shoes on. She went outside. We're looking around, and in her mind, she'd been out there last summer. And so Grandad was saying, no, it's 10 years. And she's going, no. But she's looking around, and I can see her looking at the pagoda, and she's like, I painted that pagoda last summer, and now it's all tatty and all the paint's coming off. It's like, oh. And she's like, that bush got big. You know, like, she's realizing how much time she lost. And I was just running around getting photos, like loads of photos of her. And then she ended up dying a few weeks after that, you know. And that was actually, it almost felt like this precious little moment of life and responsiveness that we got from her. I managed to get it in pictures. They ended up being the last pictures that we ever took of her. You just never know, I suppose, do you? So.
I know. And to me, I look back and I'm like, what's going to be, I mean, all my clients are so important to me, and I love capturing all their memories, and all of these things are so important. But then at the end of the day, you know, when I look back, I'm like, what's going to be really important to me is probably the photos of my own family. And so since becoming a mom too, especially, I think it's just been like, wait a second, why did I even get into this? It's all about preserving imagery and memories and relationships, and getting back to that. For me, and I think for all photographers, you kind of forget, like, oh, I'm so into like what's going on, and getting submitting and getting published and booking more weddings. And you kind of like, you know, it's like, why did you even start doing photography in the first place? I think you kind of come back to that a little bit. And what's really, when you look back on your life body of work, what are going to be the most important images to you? And I kind of thought about that before I started the photo day project. I'm like, wait a second, when I look back, what are really going to be the ones that, it's not probably going to be this random model with like a bouquet that's so beautiful. It's probably going to be these like precious images of like us and our family. So
I love that. They're such important questions to ask. You know, like you said, if you're looking at the end of your life, looking back, what are you actually going to have really loved? And pictures are you going to treasure the most? That's so precious. So you also mentioned that branding is a real area of interest for you. And you love working on branding. So tell me how that kind of love for branding started, and what it is you love about branding.
Well, I went to school for graphic design. And
Yeah.
so I really was doing more graphic design for print. So that's like logos and printed products, not really websites. So I was doing that and really did all kinds of different random clients, like from oil companies, different types of, corporate companies, and then got to do, just all kinds of different companies. But in school, we really were taught like you really first start by thinking about your target market and who you're targeting to. And I think in weddings, it's easy to just like, well, brides that are having beautiful weddings outside, or, I mean, of course, we all want like the vineyard wedding. That's so beautiful, or the chateau. So, but it's like kind of come back to like think about, you know, who are you as an artist, or who are you going to target with your brand? Because there's kind of two different ones. As an artist, your branding might be more you as a person, or branding could be more like you as kind of like just as a brand, like a company like Anthropology or Pottery Barn. They're targeting a very certain demographic or certain type of person. Pottery Barn is very different than Anthropology. And so when I do at my workshops, it's one of the beginning things we talk about is like, look, you don't know where you're going to go unless you kind of figure out first, like who your target market is and overall, like what you're going to do with, who you're marketing to, who your target market is, where they shop, what type of person are they. There's so many different types of brides, different types of weddings, different types of portrait clients. And so really figuring out that first before you go into like building a website and putting together a portfolio, like, what are the colors you want to feel like? What are the locations? And so thinking about a lot of that stuff first before you just kind of it's easy just to like shoot a lot of pretty stuff and throw it all up there. And when I'm like, what do you do styled shoots? So styled shoots should be like resonating your brand to the direction. Are you wanting to go more modern or romantic? Is it going to be more French, or is it going to be more California, or is it going to be more New York? Are you more big city? Where do you live? Where does it even make sense? Like, does it make sense if you live in this area to be marketing to this type of client? Or if you are you going to fly to all those types of clients? Or, do you need a market in the Midwest? And then those need to be like a Midwest type client. So it's kind of in like just really thinking through a whole lot of stuff before you put up a new brand or new website, and kind of come back to the target client and come up with your branding words. I mean, people talk about that all the time, but what's the words of your brand? And more than just like, oh, fine art, luminous. Like I feel like in the fine art community or the, photography community, it's like the same words over and over.
Yeah.
Classic, timeless, romantic, and that's fine. But like, let's really come up with like, something deeper than that. And like, what's your mission? What's your, statement? And so for my new website I launched, I like actually put up an artist statement, which you don't really see a lot on photographers' websites. Like you do on all artist websites, but like an artist statement, like this is like my vibe. This is why I shoot this certain way. This is my type of client that I'm marketing to. So, before my last brand, like my whole last logo and website was a little more classic. It was a little more like, I'd call like Pottery Barn, Kleinfeld, meets Vera Wang, like all those kind of put together, I guess.
Hilarious.
And that's how my logo looked. My brides looked that way. The brides I showed looked that way. And for my new website, I did a whole branding film. And we filmed it in Paris because I love that. Like, basically, I wanted my brand to feel more like me. And I call my brand kind of like modern Parisian, a little more black and white, a little more edgy. Like, my last branding was just not completely like it fit all my brides, but it wasn't really completely like didn't resonate with me. And I wanted my brand to feel a little bit more like me. Like if you met me and you came to my house, it's a little more edgy, it's more black and white, it's a little more modern. And so I wanted my brand to kind of feel a little bit more like me as a person and as an artist. So I kind of went with that direction, and to actually kind of pull in some of those types of clients so that are a little bit more that style. So that's kind of just overall thinking through that. And I mean, creating a Pinterest board. And I mean, I think everyone does that, but creating a Pinterest board of your brand, and not just like of other pretty images or other pretty photography, but like elements and textures and colors and lines and typography, and just really thinking through a lot of that. And really, I think overall, just like differentiating yourself from all
Yeah.
other photographers, because when I go to these photographers' websites, it's a whole lot of the same, and it's a lot of copying. It's a lot of the same color palette or the same logo, fonts, or calligraphy. And then we've moved off from that to like a little more modern now. And so everyone's kind of doing the same thing, but just really figuring out how you can stand out in your brand and making it different than everybody else. And so when someone comes, because when brides are coming to different websites, they're probably going to like 20 different photography websites or more. I don't know what, like, there's probably a number of how many they go to. And so they're going to so many, and you need to have like something that really sticks with them and something that's going to be different. It's not just like, oh, okay, yeah, more pretty images. I like this one, like, so I think video, has gotten really big, and having some type of video or movement on the website, because video overall is just our technology and Instagram stories. People just want more, I think, movement and video to see how people interact and how they work. And so I think video is important. Keeping text really short, I think, is important too, because people really don't even read a lot. And so, but a lot of people hire copywriters, but then I've heard of photographers who hire copywriters and they're like, well, the copy doesn't really feel like me. And so I think it should still feel like you. So even if you hire a copywriter, I think it should really still feel like you and your brand. So I think it's just important as an artist that overall it just feels like you. And so when they meet you, your brand feels like you, your art and all your photography looks like you, and it's all that same, feel. So kind of just overall, I like kind of exploring that with people and challenging people, like, why is your logo blue? There should be a reason if your logo's blue. Like, I want to know why it's blue. Why did you do this styled shoot here? Like, does this make sense? Why is it in this random location? Is that even somewhere you're going to book weddings? Is that even somewhere that they would do high-end weddings? Or is it just for low-end weddings? Just really thinking through everything that's on your site, and then being really intentional about the things you're putting out there, and then the copy you're putting out there, just having it all really fit and flow, and come back to kind of what your target market was and your whole goal and mission with your business and where you want it to go.
Oh, so true. And then you were saying earlier that, you rather than just saying fine art, classic, timeless, because everyone's saying that, to be specific. And I even think a lot of people who are searching for photography, it's the first time that they're looking to hire a professional photographer. I think a lot of them won't even know what fine art means. I don't know if they're even going to be searching. I mean, we know what fine art means, but to them, they're like, I don't know.
I just like your photos.
So I try and think, okay, if I was looking for my pictures and I didn't know what to call them, what would I search for? And like, it can be quite difficult to come up with those words. But like you said, just because other people are saying it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for your client. Because I say relaxed a lot on my website, and I have very relaxed style pictures.
That's a good one.
So I hire people who are very relaxed. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I want relaxed clients too. I don't think they actually realise what they mean when they say they want relaxed clients, because I have clients that I'm literally chasing them a few weeks before the wedding saying, I do need to know what time it starts. I do need to know where I'm going.
That's when your branding's working too well, because they're too relaxed.
They're so chilled out. They're practically lying down. And I turn up to a wedding with very little information about what's going on, and I just go with the flow. Some people, that's their absolute worst nightmare. And so you don't want to put relaxed clients on your website, because that's the reality of what you might get. I think what a lot of people, when they say, oh, I want relaxed clients, they want somebody who's easy to work with. And that's a very different thing. That's just about how much they trust you, and that's about then how much you trust yourself. Like, do you know who you are and what you're about? So for someone who has absolutely no idea where to start with this, they're like, I don't really know what my brand is. I don't know what my ideal client is. Do you have any tips about where they can start? Do you know how they even start this process?
I think first it's going to take a couple years, and I wish it wasn't a couple years, but I think it just takes a couple years to figure out what direction you want to go. And so until then, you just shoot whatever. And that's what I did. You just shoot whatever pays. You try it all out, because sometimes you'll get into weddings, you realize, I really hate weddings. I really love shooting babies. Or you'll shoot babies and like, I don't want to shoot another baby ever again. I only want to shoot weddings, or only like couples, or I only like elopements, or I really like ballroom weddings, or these ballroom weddings pay really good. So I think it just takes a little while to figure it out. And mine has totally changed over the years, because before I shot film, I loved ballroom weddings. My brand resonated with that. And I loved, like, glam was really in back then. So I loved glam and big, and I had some awesome weddings that looked like that. And there were big ballroom weddings. And that was really fun. But then once I started shooting film, it's like, well, I don't really like that as much. Let's show a little more, ranch weddings, vineyard weddings. And now I'm like, okay, now let's show different types of locations. As a destination photographer, I want to, like, show a variety of locations that I can do different types of things, but still in the film, realm. So I think it just takes a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for when people come to my workshop and they're like, I don't really know what I want to do. But sometimes they do more than what you don't like. So it's like, kind of take, well, what I don't like doing these things, maybe put a Pinterest board together. And unfortunately, you're probably going to be emulating other people's work for a couple of years too. So it's like, you like this person or that person, and you kind of learn from them, and you take pieces of all that until you kind of start figuring out, like, okay, this is my style, or I like this. And sometimes when I meet people, I'm like, oh, well, I feel like you kind of have this, like, California vibe going on. You got a lot of oranges. Like, you just, you're like yourself, you just kind of, like, resonate maybe with a color sometimes, or sometimes you like, a certain style. As much as I want to be, like, dark and moody, sometimes I just can't help it. My style just, like, is still, like, pastel-y and light.
I'm exactly the same. I try and take pictures, I just can't.
Yeah. And I'm like, I really like this one. It's, like, really soft and pretty. And so, I mean, the types of brides that want, like, a little more digitally dark photos, I've missed out on shooting their weddings, even though, like, they've been friends of mine or I've known them. It's just not the style they want, and that's not what I do. So you just, over time, I think you kind of learn, like, okay, this is what I like. These are the types of people I like shooting. A lot of my clients are, like, lawyers or doctors, or in the tech field. And so that's kind of how my clients are. But some people might like shooting a little more like artists, or more indie weddings, or like boho weddings. So I think it just takes a little while before, so I hate to be like, oh, this is what you should just, figure it out and just start pinning, put a Pinterest board together. But I think you can put a Pinterest board together and kind of, like, think about it and be like, I like blue because of this, I'm in this location, or I like orange because I'm more like California. And that doesn't really even matter. It just might just be kind of like your color palette. And when you look at certain photographers, they do the big ones. I feel like they have, like, a color palette that they kind of resonate with over and over again. And I think that helps make a really solid brand. Like, even your photos, you have, like, a certain, color palette and these pastel colors that, like, come up over and over again. And so I think that just becomes kind of part of your color palette and your style and aesthetic. And you've got those, clients that'll resonate with it. So I think come back, though, first to being like, what are your ideal clients? Where do they shop? What do they like? What do they wear? Where do they eat? What types of, movies do they watch? Like, just all that kinds of things. Think about your target client first, write it down. And then what your goals are. Like, I want to do this many weddings at this price point. And then that'll kind of give you your target clients to start with. Yes. So kind of coming back to that. And I mentor a lot of people that don't do weddings too, because sometimes they might do families. And it's like, well, do you want to do families that are indoors, outdoors? Do you want to do, just all kinds of different things? Like, one girl came to my workshop last year. She's like, I really want to shoot these, like, it was so pretty. Her Pinterest board had this, like, basically farm life look, and it was perfect for where she lived. There's a lot of people that do cotton farming, and just this very, like, magnolia style, like, it was Texas, but really, like, pretty and lifestyle. And I was like, oh, well, here's your brand. You just kind of, like, came up with your whole brand on a Pinterest board, and you need to shoot some stuff that looks like your Pinterest board to start creating this unique brand that no one else is really doing, that I haven't seen anyone else do, like, this really specific style. So, I think having something like
the hardest thing about doing your brand is that you do exactly like you just said, you do need to be brave and do what other people aren't doing. Because the temptation is to look at what everyone else is doing and think, oh, they're being successful and their website looks pretty, and I'll just try and do that. But they're already there doing it. And you don't want to play catch up with them. And so it's actually having the courage to go, I'm going to do something different. And that can be quite scary, I think, too. Yeah.
And I think looking outside of, like, wedding photography, or just the photography in general, and looking towards other types of brands or other marketing campaigns or advertising campaigns that are outside of, like, what we see all the time. And I got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to keep looking at wedding blogs over and over, because you just kind of start seeing a lot of the same stuff and like really being inspired for yourself more outside. And so for me, it's all about art. And that's like my new thing on my new website, is being inspired by art. And I've always loved French Impressionism. And so the colors and the light, the French Impressionism really influenced my work, and sculptures and posing in sculptures. I use that in my posing. And so taking something, and that's still pretty close to photography, but still taking something that's not photography and being inspired by like not other photographers, I think is so important. Either if you're starting out, or you're still going, like if you're, like me, been doing it for a long time, just finding inspiration elsewhere. And another photographer I've heard, he loves movies. And so watching like cinema and like the cropping in movies is so different than sometimes what we shoot, and being inspired by that. Like that could be something that's something unique, or seeing different advertising campaigns that are more lifestyle. And you're like, oh, I'm really into this, this advertisement from a marketing campaign, and maybe I can do something like that for my clients. I don't know, just different ways to be inspired and find something that's more uniquely you, that makes sense for like where you live or the type of client you want to get. I think is really important overall, because otherwise everyone's just replicating each other.
Yeah, that is such a good tip, to take inspiration outside of the photography industry, so that you're getting inspiration from something that potentially no one else is doing within the photography industry. So that's a really good tip. Yeah. And I suppose you're also saying to just give yourself grace that it might take time as well, that your original ideal client, my ideal client when I first started, I thought was going to be like really hipster, tattooed, big, and I thought that's who I was going to photograph. And I did a few weddings like that, but very, very quickly, it was the same type of people who were hiring me, and it wasn't the bearded tattoo people. You mentioned that you photograph a lot of, I think you said teachers, but I end up photographing a lot of doctors. I don't know why. I just seem to be the photographer for doctors, and and so I started noticing, oh, okay, this is a certain type of person who is attracted to my work, and so I had to just let go of who I thought was my ideal client, which is based really on what I thought other people were going to admire me if I had these types of clients. And I let that go and just thought, these are my people, these are my clients that just absolutely love me, and they're happy with their work, and I'm happy shooting the wedding, and been very happy ever since. So it's evolution, I suppose. So it's not so what you're saying is not to take the pressure on, that you don't have to have all the answers today if you don't know who your ideal client is, and to your brand. It will evolve over time.
It does. And mine has changed. Like I said, I mean, I used to shoot these ballroom weddings and I was doing that. And now and I still do some of those too, but they're more in like the fine art realm. All my brides for the most part are super detailed. And that's just kind of comes with like, my brides are really into details. And because I show that, and they're really into like all the little, things they put into their wedding. And so they kind of are like me a little bit, like they love little details, and they're overly detailed with everything. And so I have to give them some grace, because I'm like, that's how I was as a bride. Like that's, so I get the same type of client, and it's good. It's better than, like you have the relaxed client. You're like, oh, the overly relaxed client. I have the overly detailed brides. And I really love them because it makes it so beautiful in the end. And it's really fun to like work with all of them. And they're all,
this is the thing, you said you love it because that's the way your brain's wired. I love my super relaxed clients because that's the way my brain's wired. I'm just like, oh yeah, go with the flow. I always say to them, I am the most low maintenance photographer you will probably ever find. Like I just need about 3 questions answered. I'm just going to turn up and fit in, and that's a very unusual. It's a very unusual way of working. So I need people that's going to be okay for them. That they're like, oh yeah, fine with us.
My brides would not be okay with that. They'd be like, wait. Details, texting, and that's okay, because I like that, and I think it makes it, it makes our photos come out, and it's like even more of a collaboration when I've like helped them through different things and worked on timelines, or worked with their planners on timelines, and so it's kind of almost like you are your brand. I think it comes back to like you are your brand, and you should hiring clients that are like you or that resonate with you. I think this comes out to being a better match, because when they're not, I think that's when it's kind of hard for you as like a photographer to kind of work with them. So
true. So true. That's so handy. So you mentioned that you do mentorship as well. Workshops that you're going to be doing. And so tell us a little bit more. I know that I'm not sure when the next one's going to be, but what do the workshops look like? And I presume there's a lot of branding help. You've mentioned that already. Are there other aspects of the workshops?
Yeah, so I've done some workshops I've done some that are just one day, and then I've done multi-day ones like in France. I've done a couple of those too, and those ones are so fun.
Oh,
And so they're all kind of different. That's like me and my artisticness. I like to change it up a little bit. And I also think in general, a lot of the photography workshops are a lot of the same over and over. And so I've kind of changed it up and been like, let's do a one whole day on branding. And so my last one last year, we did like one whole day of branding, one whole day of wedding photography. And then the third day was like marketing, styling, and advertising. So I kind of broke it up into 3 different days where people could like do all three or pick and choose.
yeah.
So I did that last year in Texas. I've also done some one day ones in Texas where we always do like a styled shoot. And yeah, we talk about branding, marketing, social media, getting published. I like to talk about getting published. I think that's hard for some people. So getting published, working with other vendors and collaborating, especially as you get higher up in the industry. I think it's even more important to be really tight with certain vendors because you get to a point where you go from booking just this way and you're only booking maybe on social media, and then it's like social media and publications and vendors, past clients, and it goes from like just past clients and planners and to where you're like basically just getting a lot of planner referrals or past client referrals. And that's kind of where my business is, where I get a lot of my referrals just come in because I'm at a higher price point. They come from planners or they're like sisters of past brides or something like that. So anyway, so that kind of, how that kind of morphs over time. And so where you start might end up changing, and how you market and network kind of changes over time. But we always do styled shoots too at all my workshops. We do styled shoot, and I really talk about how important it is to do styled shoots like at venues that you want to book at, because I think a lot of people are like, well, I'll just go do a styled shoot, or there's all these like shootouts now where people just like pay to go to a shootout, and then it's like, well, 20 other people have those photos and they're all in the same metroplex area and you all went to the same shootout. And so now brides are confused because they're seeing the same shoot on like so many different people's websites, and it's not really unique for you. And so I think when you do styled shoots, it's more important to actually like get to know vendors and get to build relationships with vendors, doing shoots that are important for you. And when I do one-on-one mentorships, we always do a styled shoot that's like for their brand, which I like doing because at workshops, it's kind of for everybody. When I do a one-on-one, I can kind of like make the styled shoot for their brand. And it's like, where does your brand need to go? What colors does it need to be? What type of bride do you want? What type of dress should we get that really makes sense with your brand? And then what type of venue should it be? And it needs to be at a venue that potentially would have good SEO to like people would find you and want to rebook you at that venue that makes sense. And so just like a lot of that kind of goes into like we talk about that, and then we also like do the styled shoot, and I think it's just fun for people to work together and shoot. And I think in general just watching other people shoot, when I've gone to like workshops in the past or styling workshops, just watching somebody do it has been so helpful. And so I love for people just to come and like experience that and like to watch me shoot, watch somebody else shoot. At my bigger workshops, we do portfolio reviews, which I think is so important to have someone look at your portfolio at any stage of your career and say, this photo's not strong, this one's stronger, I like this one has more emotion, you have too much space above their heads, you've got these hot spots on the ground, you've got some plugs that could be cloned out, and just like having someone show you that, you'll like then you'll see it and you're like, okay, now I see all this stuff and I need to change it. And it's something you always like remember and like moves forward in your work and just pushing you to like another level. So I think portfolio reviews are really fun at any stage. So yeah, just kind of like all that stuff. And and I talk about my personal projects and how important it is, because I know for people too, I can see them go through like the process and then get to the burnout process. I've been doing it long enough where I've seen photographers come in and already leave because they've burnt out, or they were shooting so much or for not enough, and they weren't shooting and pricing themselves enough, and they just burn out on it. And so, I think that's important, like the longevity, if you want to keep, shooting weddings or just in general, like what you're going to keep shooting forever, and figuring out like how you can stay inspired and that kind of thing. Because I think there's a lot of people that get into it and they're loving it, and then they hit the burnout part. And so for me, that's why I always tell my story about the burnout first, because I'm like, this is going to happen at some point if you keep shooting. You just can't like keep going and then get to a point where you're not burnout and you need to do something else or change it, or raise your prices or something. So
yeah. It's so true. Absolutely. Well, it's been so lovely to talk to you, and that workshop sounds fantastic. And
yes,
go through with people. It's very diverse. You're pretty much covering all the bases.
I know.
Portfolio review and everything. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I suppose if people follow on your Instagram, or that they can get updates when the next workshop's coming out.
Yes.
Is that probably the best way for people to get information?
Yeah, on my Instagram, or go to my website and get on my newsletter, because I'll for sure email my newsletter first about when my next workshop's going to be.
And your online course with the acoustic art as well.
Yes, that'll be coming out really soon. So that also I have a link on my Instagram too for that. So you can kind of sign up for that if that's something that you want to see or interest you. You can kind of watch some videos of it and check it out.
Amazing. And in fact, by the time this podcast goes live, it might well be out already.
So if
you're listening to this podcast, go and check it out, see if it's already out. If it's not out, it will be out very, very soon.
Yes.
I mean, that sounds like great fun to just, challenge yourself creative to do something a bit more kind of hands-on, I suppose, with your art. Really fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kayla. It's been so wonderful to talk to you, and for being so generous with all your advice about branding. That's been so helpful, and I'm sure will be helpful for many in our community. So
good.
Thank you so much for that.
Good. Thank you for having me. It's been super fun.
You're so welcome.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more interviews, tips and inspiration in the Love Light Fine Art community on Facebook. You can also follow along with each new episode on the Love Light YouTube, podcast and Instagram. And don't forget to visit www.sarahjaneethan.co.uk/lovelight for information on training, real-life wedding workshops and online courses to develop your own fine art photography and connect with more of the clients you love.